So, welcome, you guys. You guys are the strong ones who made it into the group tonight. I was just explaining that there's been a problem on Meetup. So, hopefully it will be resolved soon. This group is still happening. I actually won't be here next week, but I will be here the following week and then up until Thanksgiving. So, just keep checking back if anybody is listening to this who's having a problem. Some people are having problems, some people aren't. I also was having a problem. So, yeah, just check back. It's just Meetup. It takes a while sometimes. Mm. And you guys can always reach out to me directly. I did just get somebody emailing me for the link. So if you know me and you or you even just have my website, you can reach out to me and I can send you the link directly. Okay. So for those of you who know me and those of you who don't, my name's Chloe Ballatori. I'm a relationship and communication expert. I'm a graduate of Princeton University and Pat Allen's Want Institute. I've written four books on this subject. The first book, How to Live, Find Love and Keep It, has the real basics of this work. All the books are available on Amazon. Um, my second book, New Ways of Being, The Pain of Change, which is really about um, what happens when we start doing this work, because even making changes for the better end up being painful. And so um, a lot of people, why is that happening? Start doing work and they don't like it because it's painful, or at first it feels okay, but then it doesn't feel okay. And this is just the nature of life on earth. When we're making changes, it is painful. And so it's really nice to be able to distinguish between the pain that change needs to take place or the pain that change is already taking place, so that we can have the fortitude to go through difficult moments without reaching for something like a behavior or a drug or something like that. And that's really what a lot of this work is having that courage to make changes and to get through that and get to the other side. Um, it does work. It takes persistence. It takes repetition. But luckily, we now know that the brain can change itself, that the brain is plastic. If we were living during Freud's time, we would think that we were cooked by age 12, because that's when all the critical developmental windows happen, are really between the ages of 0 and 12. So Freud was right about that, but we're not cooked. We can change. There's a great book about that called The Brain That Changes Itself by Norman Deutsch that I love, and it talks a lot about stroke victims, but it really applies to pretty much everything. People are patterns, and so we get habituated into certain patterns, mostly as a result of childhood trauma. These are patterns that are coping mechanisms that we think are existential truths, but are really strategies of the moment. And we get into trouble when we bring these coping mechanisms into our adult relationships. And that's where we see these patterns show up the first, is usually in our most intimate relationships. And what we will do if we're unconscious of these patterns is we'll select people, and it's done by the unconscious and the subconscious. The conscious mind could never map it out the way that the unconscious and the subconscious does. But the unconscious selects people who fill in for the roles of our caretakers. And so we try to find somebody that's similar and then solve us the situation with that person. And that almost always doesn't work. This is something that's known as the repetition compulsion, and it was talked about by Freud, also by a wonderful psychologist named Alice Miller, whose work I love. But it basically states that we're doomed to repeat that which we don't understand. And that's because that repetition brings us a certain degree of comfort simply because it's familiar. Unfortunately, it won't bring us joy. And so it takes a ton of awareness to break these patterns. and choose then something else. Awareness and then the courage to choose something else and to take a counteraction against what's known as these scripts, these childhood scripts. If you're really into this work, and you like what you're hearing tonight, I do teach this work a few times a year. I just finished a module one, but I'm also offering an asynchronous module one. So you guys can get on that. A bunch of people have reached out to me because my module two starts October 16th. And so I think that's the date, but it starts mid-October. And so some people are wanting to get into module two, but they haven't done module one yet. If that's you, you can do the asynchronous version, and then you'll be able to come into the live version of module two. So I'll put my collateral again in the chat, and that's under module packages. I work with men, I work with women, I work with couples, I work with children. Um, that is teenagers. I prefer not to work with little children, but sometimes I do. But usually in the presence of their parents. And I do private sessions. So in addition to this meetup, you can schedule a private as well. Okay, when we talk about relationships, and specifically when we talk about successful relationships, what we're talking about is that complementary energy between feminine energy and masculine energy, also known as yin and yang. And it doesn't have to be men and women, right? We can have a feminine man with a masculine woman, and that's a balanced relationship. And similarly, this work translates for homosexual relationships. There's a top and a bottom, there's a butch and a femme, we're all good. So it's this complementary energy that we really look for. So it's important to understand which energy is most authentic to you in your personal life. Most of us, when we're at work, are in our masculine energy, right? Because masculine energy is all about competing, conquering, controlling. It's doing, it's that left brain activity, it's single-mindedness, it's singular thought, it's achieving, taking care of, giving. Masculine energy is very much of the world, and we live in a very masculine society. It's one of the reasons that we fail to cherish the environment, for example. And then all of us have that right hemisphere of our brain, which is more feminine, which is passive, patient, vulnerable, which is receiving, the seat of spirituality, sensuality, sexuality, magic, creativity, feelings. This energy is in the world to make it fun, but it's not of the world. And this is the basic difference between masculine and feminine energy. All of us are both, all of us have a unique balance in relationship to ourselves, and we all of us have this balance in our relationships with other people. Now, when it's a friendship, it can be two feminine energies or two masculine energies. A work relationship is usually two masculine energies, but the most successful romantic relationships, there's one feminine and one masculine, or one yin and one yang energy. One isn't better than the other. Okay, so it's not like being feminine is better than being masculine, or being masculine is better than being feminine. Uh, they're different. And so what we look for is equity in our relationships more than strict equality. Strict equality can kill the chemistry. And so I think there's a big misunderstanding about that, because with feminism, women have gotten the right to work and to get paid the same as men. And that's been a great thing, but it's an economic movement more than it is a psychological one. And so, in getting our equal rights, some of us in society in general has kind of forgotten the value of feminine energy in personal relationships. Now, when you get really good at this work, you will know when to use your feminine energy and when to use your masculine energy. Um, but it's important to understand the nature of these energies, and if you want in your relationships, do you want your thoughts respected or do you want your feelings cherished? Everybody wants both, but it's important to pick one or the other so that we avoid power struggles with our partners. There can be a power struggle for control, which is the masculine energy, or a power struggle for sympathy or tears, which is the feminine energy. Okay. But what I teach is negotiating with love, which means that one person has the feminine and one person has the masculine. It's not that you can never switch off. And sometimes, if I have a really strong alpha couple, meaning each of them has a strong feminine energy and a strong masculine energy. And that's really what a definition of an alpha is. It's not a bully, it's somebody who has a strong masculine and a strong feminine side, a strong yin side and a strong yang side, right? That's what makes a leader. Um, but the only rule I have about that is when you have a conflict or an awkward situation, if I start with a thought, then my partner has to respond with a feeling and vice versa. And that's how we keep the communication balanced when it gets thrown off. A lot of us have our balance thrown off when we're triggered. And a triggering is a harkening back to a childhood wound, right? So balance can get thrown off by being triggered. And then we get thrown into what's known as ego dystonia, meaning we're using the side of our personality that doesn't benefit us, that is sabotaging the situation rather than negotiating the situation with love. So if some of this stuff sounds complicated, don't worry. I know for me, it took me a while to really understand this stuff. And then when you put it into practice, you learn it more deeply. This work was like brand new to me when I learned it 12, 13 years ago. So if it sounds like maybe something resonates, but you don't totally get it, don't worry. It's a matter of repetition. So I usually give this background. Again, the scholarship that this work is based on is very established. The tools to execute on that scholarship, that's what's new. I use tools that I've created because I've been doing this work for a while. I also use tools that my mentor, Pat Allen, taught me, and I use the tools from Eric Berne's transactional analysis. So those are the three categories of tools that I use in working with people, and I've worked with thousands of people at this point. Um, I give my little spiel, then I want to hear your questions. I want to hear your updates because that's how we really get to learn. I can talk theory for the next hour, but when I hear from you guys, then we get to see how it works. We get to see it on its feet, and that's what's really useful. And in my module packages, we do that even more. Okay, Elizabeth.
Hey Chloe.
Hi, welcome back. How can I help you?
So I have a question. And this is based on a pattern I have noticed. So let's just for this example, I'll use, one guy. So there's this guy, I guess we're friends, um, somewhere in between acquaintances and friends, more friends, I guess you could say. But I have noticed he's in his masculine energy most of the time. Like that's what he is.
Mhm.
But but I have also noticed that other women right around him have noticed that too. And everyone wants a provider. I mean, everyone like wants that. So everyone is like flocking to him. And so now I feel like there's all this competition, around this person. And I'm kind of very you know, I'm I like to sit in my feminine energy because it's natural to me. So I'm not the one to like go here and compete for somebody. I feel like I practice like that spiritual, whatever, that law of attraction. So I
Mhm.
feel like if it's something's meant to be, it will be. I am not gonna have to sit there and fight for it and play all these games. So I'm just wondering, in your opinion, do you feel like is that normal? For there to be more competition for somebody, if you want somebody in their masculine energy, and you want someone to respect your feelings, is there going to be more competition for something like that? You know?
Um, it's not that there's going So there's a couple things that you're saying. So first of all, I want to point out that yes, there's something that happens when you're in your feminine energy, which is passive, patient, and vulnerable. And like you said, you don't want to chase, right?
Right.
So you are going to be on the sidelines watching aggressive, more masculine women going after the guy you like, right? And that
Right.
is making you feel like, shit, I'm missing out. Like all these girls are vying for his attention, right?
Hmm.
And they're being aggressive and they're putting in the effort and that especially when it's a wealthy guy or even a wealthy woman that can be somewhat intimidating.
Well,
But
no, I wouldn't say wealthy, but well off.
well
He's
off.
well
Okay.
off. Yeah.
Okay. Um, but if he's a masculine guy, he's not going to want to compete with these women for control. If they're chasing him, that doesn't leave him with anything to do. Have you seen any of them be successful?
No, like one of these women have been after him for the whole, I've known him for 6 years. She's been after him the whole time I've known him. And he still hasn't reciprocated her, whatever she's doing. So she's still on the sidelines.
Right. Okay. So it sounds like while it's probably frustrating for you, it's not, it doesn't work for them. So I would just hang in there and stay in your feminine energy. There are things you can do still to get his attention, like asking for help, asking for an escort. The more you show him respect, if he's truly in his masculine energy, that's going to draw him more to you. Now, it's not just about the communication. The communication we can work on the most, but it's also about the chemistry, right? He must have chemistry for you. And that's like a gift from God. You either have it or you don't, especially for men. Sometimes for women, it can build, but in my experience, men know pretty early on if they have the chemistry or not. And one of the things that's been interesting in watching some of these reality dating shows is sometimes they're trying to force couples be together. And even if the guy on the show is being like, yeah, okay, yeah, I'm into it now, they're not. And most of these shows, obviously, the relationships don't usually work out. Mm. So I wouldn't worry too much about the other women vying for his attention. You just do you. And, like you said, if it's meant to be, then it will be. The other element is compatibility. Do you guys want the same things? That can be worked on a little bit. But you're ahead of the game if he's in the masculine and you're in the feminine, but the other stuff is does he want to get married? Does he want kids? Is that what you want? Do you want to live in Los Angeles? Do you want to live in New York? So there's some negotiation there. The thing we can work on the most is communication. So I'll give you all the tools to present yourself. He may not like you still. That's just the way it is, right? But he likes something about you because you guys have been friends for a long time. I still want you to be dating two other people. I know we've talked about this before, but you have like all your eggs in this basket and you're getting
Yeah.
overcommitted with a guy who it hasn't even really shown that he's into it yet.
Right.
So, you know, it's not anything against you. It's nothing personal, really. It's just it you can have chemistry for someone even isn't good for you. You can have chemistry for somebody who sits next to you in church who you don't even know. So part of it is, like you said, it's up to God.
Hmm.
So do your thing, practice your feminine tools, but don't just sit on the bench waiting for this guy.
And then the two other guys you said, like, but how do I do this? Like, do I practice detachment? Or how do I juggle? Like, I don't know how to do this. Like, um, do I stay detached emotionally while I get to know these other two people? That I'm tr like I don't have anyone right now, but when I do, like, because I get too invested. So how do
Right.
I do that?
Don't need to be detached. It's just that when don't commit, you got to watch how much you're committing, how much time, energy, effort you're committing before you're actually in a relationship. And that's why having three people at once will help you,
Oh,
because
right, because
then
it'll
you won't
balance.
throw
Yeah, yeah,
everything into one. Two
right.
people. isn't as good because then it's either or. So three people is kind of that balanced triangle. And
Hmm.
that will help you from getting just how many hours in the day are there? You're not going to be able to devote all to one person if you've got three people. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Chloe.
You're so welcome. And, kudos to you for hanging in there and trying and keeping up. I mean, everybody in this room, a lot of people are just happy or not happy, living unhappy lives, but also not willing to do anything about that. Okay.
Wendy's next.
Okay, thank you, Raul. And Raul's here, you guys. He's my co-host. I'd love to have him here when he can make it, which is usually. And so if you can't get my attention or you need something, you can always also reach out to Raul. Okay. Hi, Wendy.
Hello.
You made
Yes, yay.
it.
Yeah, something weird with the website,
I
but
know it's been all day for me too. Raul says he's not having a problem, but for me, I was too. It was so frustrating. So I'm
oh,
assuming a lot of people have been having the same problem.
yeah.
But I couldn't even
So,
send a message to the group. So
oh wow.
okay, so how can I help
Yeah,
you?
yeah, I'm talking to this guy in
Hello? I lost you. I can't hear you. I just heard I'm talking to this guy. Okay, I'm gonna move on to
oh,
Sophia. Oh, there you are.
you can hear me now?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
What happened? This happened before.
I don't know.
Okay,
Okay, so you're
so
talking to this guy.
yeah, in LA that
Oh, right.
we
You mentioned this. Yes.
I did?
Yeah.
I did?
I think you
It,
did because you were like, I don't know how
huh.
much he's gonna want to drive, but
God, I don't remember that. Anyway,
okay.
so yeah, he's really wonderful in a lot of ways. He's masculine, but he's very sweet and sensitive, and yeah, he seems potentially really wonderful. But I don't know until I meet him.
Hmm.
Even on some we've
Oh,
done
you haven't actually met.
no, because
Oh, okay. Maybe I'm
you
thinking of
know,
somebody else then. Okay, so
yeah,
you haven't met, but you've been
yeah,
talking to
and
him
it's
on
been at
on the
least
phone or text or what?
first of all, it's been at least 3 weeks since I've known him. I could be more, could be more. Um, Mostly it was texting, and I told him, I really don't feel comfortable with this. So we talked on the phone a couple times, and then we did two Zooms recently.
Oh, good. Okay, so you've seen
It
his face?
is good, but it's still like, Zoom cuts out, and I can't really see his face super clearly. You know how some
Yes.
lighting you can, and some you can't, and um, but anyway, he's really like undaunted by my medical condition, which is amazing.
Yay.
And yeah, so something encountering, and really this happens a lot with retired men for me, is like, I never had a career. I worked very little in my life, and because of my condition, and so they can be kind of intimidating to me because I just haven't developed in so many ways. I've been just kind of in survival mode for a long time. Just it's absolute basics of life,
Hmm.
and um, so I'm trying to not let that get to me. But I'm realizing I'm very sort of self conscious and
Right.
not feeling super comfortable. I mean, I feel like if I had to compare us, like I'm like I can't think of the word, just more rough. Like I've got issues to deal with, and like I'm not confident in myself, and
That's
um,
okay.
don't know who I am around him, and I don't feel super comfortable. It's getting better, and also I'm so sick of it that it's kind of turning like I don't freaking care anymore. It's too hard to like,
Right.
you know what I mean? Which
Right.
I think is great. I kind of
Yeah,
feel like
no, that is. I mean, that's you're entering apathy with your own negative pattern, which is good. That's
Yeah.
like you're dropping it.
Yeah.
Okay, so a couple things I want to mention. So first of all, and this is something that we women fall into a lot, but the dating is not like a competition. You don't need to impress him with your work life. A masculine man doesn't care about your work life and how much
Yeah,
money you
I don't
made.
mean work life, but work or any kind of endeavor helps develop character and a sense of self. You know what I mean? Like all that stuff.
Okay. But everybody has insecurities.
Yeah.
And so, you can be impressed by what these guys have done, but you don't need to be intimidated by it because you're different. Look, I've already worked with you a bunch. I already know you're smart. I know you can hold your own in these conversations.
But I'm not. I'm like, I just turn into this mouse, you know?
That's okay. So just then until you have something to say, just listen.
Yeah.
Try not to be so judgmental of yourself.
Yeah.
Guy keeps calling. He's obviously interested in you. Don't
He's
be so
very
hard on
interested.
yourself, you
He's
know?
very interested and he's, talking about, he hopes that I'll come up there and live with him and he thinks I love it. It's
Whoa.
a little
Right. Well, you
overwhelming.
guys have to meet in person. How's that going?
We tried 3 times, but something came up each time, and we were going to do this weekend, but we've got a heat wave, which wouldn't be good to meet in the park in a heat
Right.
wave.
Okay. So let's try to get this meeting happening in the next couple of weeks. If the
Yeah,
meeting isn't happening in the next couple of weeks, then I'm going to think there's something suspicious happening. You know what I'm saying? But, other than that, I know you're like really hard on yourself
yeah,
and you just have to, it's not that that voice is going to go away completely, but we're just going to turn down the volume on it.
yeah,
So when you hear it, oh, there's that voice. Oh, I heard you. Interesting point of view. And then you're going to go on with whatever the hell else you're doing,
yeah,
because it's just a pattern. That's all it is. It's just a pattern of negative thought. It's not about what's really happening in the moment. You're doing just fine. He likes you. You've had a number of guys interested in you since I've been working with you. So, I think for you, the biggest thing is that self-compassion piece.
yes,
Being nice to yourself as you go through these processes. That's why these tools are developed, because getting to know someone, if they're, you don't have to do them all the time, but they're for awkward situations and for conflicts. Getting to know someone, going deeper in relationships, these bring up conflicts. In order to connect with people and get closer, it's often necessary to have a conflict, right?
really,
And when you get through that conflict, that builds your foundation of the relationship. So each time you get through a conflict, it's like, the good days are the reward for the bad days. And so that's the nature of duality here on earth. We can't really learn, we can't really get to know each other without some amount of pain and conflict. So the idea is to be able to have a conflict, a disagreement, a learning experience without it becoming an all or nothing situation. Um, when we're little, things feel all or nothing. And so we often carry that sense of fatality into our adult lives. But you've probably already seen from a logical standpoint that most things in your life aren't all or nothing. So if you have a little stumble in a conversation, who cares? Be nice to yourself. You're just a person. You just be excellent. Don't try to be perfect. Remember the 5 drivers from module 1? Be excellent, not perfect. Perfect. No human being is perfect.
yeah,
So it's like a death script to try to be perfect.
yeah,
But yeah, just watch that negative self-talk. And, sometimes it means getting a glass of water. Sometimes it may mean taking a cold shower. Sometimes it might just mean thinking of something positive, about yourself. Or just, like you said, it gets exhausting. So it might just be, okay, I hear you, and then just refocus on something else. Even sometimes taking a step in a different direction when you have a negative, like self-destructive, self-sabotaging type of thought can help.
mhm,
So it's just, we're just going to work on interrupting that pattern. We're just going to keep working on interrupting that pattern, and you'll see it will. I mean, it's already gone down a lot. You're already gotten to the point where you can see it outside of yourself and see that you're sick of it, which is a huge step. So you're very
Cool.
close to just dropping it.
Cool.
Okay, good work. I look forward to hearing your update. What happens with this guy?
Okay, thank you.
He sounds promising. You're welcome. Okay.
Sophia's next.
Okay. Hi, Sophia.
Oh, hey.
Hey,
Hey,
welcome back.
welcome back.
How can I help you?
Oh, I just had a similar type of question to the last person who was talking about insecurity, and like I can't even really pinpoint what it is that's blocking me at this point. Um shoot, how do I even say it if I don't even know what the problem is? Um I'm just trying to find a way to overcome like my fear of, I guess, getting into a relationship, because on the outside looking in, it's like, oh, I see some Polaroid of me getting my car fixed by some guy on the fly. But like my fear is that like I would become overly dependent on somebody, and then they would leave, or I would get found out, like they would find out that something's awful about me, or I have too much baggage, and now I'm like, shoot, I'm destabilized in my life. I wish I just stayed single instead, or like if I got married again and he moved into my house and then I want a divorce, then what? Then I have a squatter in my house.
Okay, so you're going like really far out with these like negative fantasies. And one thing that, this is like, this is something known, Eric Byrne calls it a reach back, because you're just negatively fantasizing about events that haven't even happened.
Yeah.
And you're spiraling about them. And so I think even you can hear that it's irrational, right? When you're telling me this.
Yeah, I know it
Right.
is, but it's also like, I don't know, like my
It's also
first marriage,
compelling.
it happened where like I wanted to leave so bad, but I was trapped.
But you did leave.
Yeah, once I was able to. It was like I was pregnant and then I couldn't leave the state because of plans to
Right.
give birth at home. And then like I gave birth at home and now I had a newborn, and then I was like, fuck it, I need to leave. Like, so I left. But I'm scared in the future there would be a harder exit. Like, oh, I bought like a house with somebody, or I sold my house and then immediately I wanted a divorce, or he died, or
Okay.
something.
So
Oh.
let me ask you this, because actually what you went through before could be also looked at as a source of confidence rather than a source of fear. So when you got married to your ex-husband, did you have doubts in your mind? Or you were
Yes, I
okay.
did.
Okay. But you just pushed those aside because you wanted to get married and you were pregnant and right?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Okay, so that's what you're not going to do next time. That's what we're doing here in this group, hopefully, is bringing your awareness level up to a point where you can truly cherish your feelings when they come up. Women, especially, we've been taught so much to discount our feelings, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that doesn't matter, or you're crazy, or there's actually no problem. These are the steps of discounting. Um, and I talk about, I think you read my first book, so
Yeah.
there's a part about discounting in the book. Um, so what you are working on, at least with me, is becoming more aware of your feelings and then cherishing them enough to take an action or an inaction based on that. So I think you can take some confidence from the fact that next time around, the next relationship you're in, if you have hesitations, if you have a gut instinct, now at least you have a rubric that you could solve conflicts with, right? You have me, there's the stroke and stand, there's a way forward with the communication. So you're going to have certain signposts. You're going to know If he doesn't cherish your feelings, that's a red flag, right? If he's not listening to you, that's a red flag. If you have a bad gut instinct, that's a red flag. And you want to honor those things rather than stuff them down, right? So the benefit of your experience is you know what the price tag is of stuffing that stuff, that of those instincts down. Nevertheless, you still found the courage to leave with a newborn, which is heroic. And now you're a single mom, which is very difficult. So I'm just, don't scare yourself. You're obviously really capable of handling your stuff, right? And now you're learning about your feelings and how to cherish your feelings. Now, does that mean that nobody will ever let you down in the future? Of course not. That's the thing. That's unfortunately what, the duality of what we're dealing with here on earth is in order to connect with somebody, we have to be vulnerable. And especially when we've had negative experiences, especially when we've had childhood trauma, being vulnerable is not our first choice, right? We're not real eager to go ahead and be vulnerable. All of us have our trouble spots, and especially in certain ways, everybody has their, triggers that will make them feel even more vulnerable because of their history of childhood trauma. Now, other people aren't responsible for not triggering you, but once you have some of these tools of communication, you're going to be able to talk more consciously with your potential partner. And so hopefully we'll be able to flush out where he's actually coming from and where he's standing. I'm sure you've heard me say before, some people I had a client ask me if I was a witch. And that's because these tools, I'm not a witch, but these tools help you see what's coming next. And it can kind of look like I'm predicting the future sometimes, just because the clarity that these tools bring and because they help flush the communication out. So, I understand you're scared. I understand you don't want the same thing to happen again. I don't want that for you either. Part of relationships, even when you get with someone that you are really, really happy with, there will still be problems occasionally, right? There will still be times when this person hurts your feelings, knowingly, unknowingly, and you'll have to work through it. So we're never going to really get rid of vulnerability, but what we're going to do is try to mitigate it and try to make it so that you don't purposely put yourself in situations in which you you're setting yourself up to fail or to be hurt or to be injured. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. I think for me, like I need to avoid situations that like I know would cause me to just be way too vulnerable. Like I need some level of privacy within the relationship in certain settings. But I'm just afraid. I guess this is like my main roadblock keeping me single. I'm afraid that like no matter how hard I try, there will always be an emergency situation where like I can't hide my garbage anymore and like I'm gonna be like embarrassed in front of him or be seen as weak or like inferior to him. So like I break up with him or
Well,
I
a masculine man isn't going to be against a weak woman.
um,
I mean, I think some of these judgments are coming from you, not from a guy. You have garbage, everybody has garbage. Everybody's insecure. Most people have childhood trauma. You're going to act crazy sometimes. It's a woman's prerogative.
I do a good job at that, I guess.
But the point, look, people are either teachable or they're unteachable. They're either set in their ways or they're open to new ways of being. So far with you, I've noticed you're open to new ways of being. That doesn't mean you're going to be perfect every time. Did we lose Sophia? Oh, no, there she is. That doesn't mean you're going to be perfect every time. And the process of learning is making mistakes, and that's so stressful for people. making mistakes and having to look at that and having to change and having to see. I mean, it takes so much courage to really weed into yourself and into your life and look at yourself in an honest way and make changes. And that's what this room is about, and that's what you're doing. So I want you to give yourself some credit for that. Um,
Uh,
and again, like I told Wendy, try not to judge yourself so much, you know?
Yeah, I'll start to think long and hard about like this thing that I'm afraid of having, like a situation that he finds me in where somebody tries to attack me or otherwise humiliate me, put me down, or put me in an inferior position to him by virtue of something that I cannot control. Um,
Do you want to give me an example and we'll troubleshoot it?
yeah, like um if somebody's being inappropriate to me, like harassing me. This happened in front of my husband, and I didn't talk to him for a week. And this is so bad, but I signed on a lease
Mhm.
to an apartment because I was so embarrassed. Like I was in the hospital and I had like an infection, and they were like talking about plans and stuff. I was like, "Are you guys like no, I'm not gonna I'm not gonna keel over from this." And like I was like feeding my newborn and the doctor was watching me. And I was like, "Oh my God, like I cannot be in this position again where somebody like
Okay, so
sexualized."
next time you would be like, I don't feel comfortable. Or you would tell your husband, and hopefully your husband would do something. And if your husband didn't do anything, then you would just say, I don't feel comfortable. What do you think about leaving? What do you think about not staring at me? Right? Because part of this is not just becoming aware of your feelings. Hopefully, we get our partner to cherish our feelings, but if we don't, then we step in and we cherish them ourselves. And even though I've been with my husband for over 20 years, occasionally he doesn't cherish my feelings. And then I have to step up and I have to cherish my own feelings.
Yeah. Yeah, I would I turn I don't want to take up too much time. I know other people have their hands up. I guess like I just like turn against my partner. Like if I get embarrassed, I start making a smoke screen, and like I pick a fight with them or I move out or something because I don't want to face the humiliation.
Right. So let's not do that because that's a self-sabotaging pattern. Yeah. I mean, the first step is seeing it, but it's also part of it again. It's funny because, you and Wendy kind of said similar things. Part of it again is your own judgment about yourself. It's okay to be human and to have weakness. We can't have strength if we don't have weakness. We can't have humiliation if we don't have moments that we're proud of. But as you do this, you'll just get better at handling things. It's really so much of life is trial and error, and people don't want to do it because they don't want the pain. They don't want to make mistakes. But I have confidence in you. And I know that you're trying and that you're intelligent and your awareness is growing. So keep at it. I know you're scared, but don't let it stop you. Okay. Raul, do you know who's next?
Yeah, let's go with Rose.
Okay. Hi, Rose.
Hi, thank you
Welcome.
for
Welcome back. How can I help
thank
you?
you. So I have been listening to your conversation and I get a question from that.
Okay.
And one of them is, let me see, chemistry. You say chemistry is the gift from God. You either have it or you don't. But after you have it, if you don't use it, will that be gone?
That's a good question. You know, not necessarily, but sometimes you can miss your window with somebody. You know what I mean? Like if the timing's not right or neither one of you takes an action, sometimes you can miss your window. You can also sometimes get to know somebody and then the chemistry peters off, right? You find out something you don't like, or,
Mm,
you know, they act in a certain way. Like I said at the beginning, too much equality can sometimes kill the chemistry. So sometimes our communication starts to kill
hmm
the chemistry. So I wouldn't say if you don't act on it, it's gone, but I will say that I, timing is a big factor. And so if sometimes I was working with a guy recently where he liked this woman for such a long time and he waited too long to make a move. And by then she had
Mm.
already moved like he waited like a year. And by then she had lost interest, she had already moved on. So if I were speaking to a man, I would say strike when the iron's hot. If you're in the masculine position, strike when the iron's hot. If
Mm.
you're in more of the feminine passive position, then, stay available and see if you can't, push him into his masculine, get him to ask you out, whatever it is.
What did you say? Ask him out?
Get him to ask you out,
Oh, okay.
by doing one
Okay.
of doing flirting or asking for help or something like that.
Mm. Okay. Another thing you were talking about is detached. Um, when you talk about detach with someone, does that mean gradually distance that person?
I don't think I was talking about detached. I think Elizabeth brought up something about being detached.
Yeah, but you were teaching us about it. Are you saying we should gradually distance someone if we want to detach?
Um, yeah, I mean, you don't need to do it gradually. If you want to detach, if you're consciously
Hmm
trying to detach with someone, is that what you're trying to do?
Yeah.
Okay. I like cold turkey. You can be gradual. I
Okay.
really like, for me personally, I like cold turkey and I like when my clients do cold turkey because it's very clean. Now, not everyone can do that. So if it doesn't work for you, don't do it because sometimes people go cold
Um,
turkey, then they go back and forth like 18 times, right? That's,
cold turkey, does that mean it just totally
yeah,
like block?
yeah. That means I'm done.
Oh,
Because
okay.
if I'm at a point where I'm trying to detach from somebody, I'm just done. I just don't want to be around that person anymore. And so I don't really
Mm,
care, right? But if you're not quite at that point, you could do something more gradual, you know, spend less time, spend less energy, start to pull away, see if that doesn't pique his interest more. Sometimes that will.
mm,
I had a situation this week with a client where she had a date with a guy and it was just, it was just a lunch. It wasn't even a dinner, but she had a date with a guy and he confirmed in the morning and they talked back and forth about time and place and he agreed on the time. He set the time and then he had asked her to pick a place, which isn't ideal. But anyways, she picked a place. She asked him, "Is this okay?" And he said, "No, what about something closer?" So she picked another place. This was like at 10:30 in the morning. They were supposed to meet at 12:30. At
mm,
12:35, he texted her. Okay, great. I meant to hit send. Sorry, I was in a meeting. Okay.
mm.
Um, Too late. Right? For her, it
Yeah.
was too late. She had already moved on. By 12:15, she was like, it's not happening. She set that
Mm,
deadline for herself, right? Then he suddenly she said, I'm going in another direction. I'm driving in another direction. Then he wanted to follow her. Then he wanted to go meet her somewhere else. Then he asked for the next day. Then he asked for the next day. She was like, let's just plan it for next week, right?
mhm,
That piqued his interest. Now that he
mm,
saw that she cherished her feelings enough, he saw he missed out. And so he chased. So sometimes
Hmm.
that will happen.
Okay. So for these planning thing, you said that for a masculine, usually men plan it. But after several times, don't you think sometimes should let women choose what they want?
Well, it's not about let. Um, it's about the courting stage versus the dating stage. So in the courting stage, we're going to let the man do the work.
Okay.
Now, in this situation, which they're just in the courting stage. They're not like officially dating. They're not boyfriend, girlfriend.
Mm, okay.
So for them, yeah, ideally I wanted him to pick the restaurants, but he was busy at work and he wasn't whatever. He did what he did and so she slid a little into the masculine and picked the restaurants. We saw where that led. It didn't the date didn't happen, right? So he was already kind of sliding off in that moment. And it's not that he's not interested. It's not that he's a jerk. It's just that a lot of times men will try to get away with certain things, either consciously or unconsciously. They'll try to make you do the work, and so it's just sometimes it's just a matter of, yeah, well, I cherish my feelings too much to be still available after the time we met. I don't know if he is
Mm.
telling the truth. Maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. It doesn't really matter, you know.
And there's another question. If this guy asked me a question, but I didn't answer at that moment because I was thinking maybe I just quiet, smile. But do you think later on, after a few days or even after weeks, I should bring up that question and say, "Oh, I
What's
was
the
thinking of these."
question? What's the question?
Um, Something like what was it that I was looking for, or something like that.
Why didn't you want to answer it?
It's some private stuff.
But don't you want him to know what you're looking for to see if you guys are a good match?
Uh, yeah, now I'm thinking of it. So is it too late to bring it up, or just let it pass and like, you know, forget about that question, or should I bring it up? Say, oh, you asked about that. I was not, I was thinking about it.
Yeah, that would be okay. Yeah, bring it
Oh,
up.
okay.
Whatever you want.
Mm,
I think either way. But when you bring it up, say, "Hey, I was thinking about what you said,
mhm.
and it's just taken me a while. Do you want to hear my answer now?" Just see, if he just alert him that this is what's happening.
Okay.
Like,
And
"Oh, remember that question you asked me? Actually, I came
so
up with
it's
some stuff."
okay. So it's not too late to
Yeah.
answer. I saw someone, I think it's you or someone put a comment there. Intimacy is intimacy. I want to know the details. See what?
Oh, I didn't put that there.
Oh,
Know what that is. I don't even think
and
no that person's
I've heard that before. Intimacy is intimacy. I was wondering
no
what see what?
true
See
intimacy is
personality, see.
into me, I see. Oh, okay. I think that just refers to that. Look, on a certain level, every relationship is about the relationship you have with yourself.
Okay.
And that's kind of a simplistic statement, but it's also a very profound statement. Um, and if you look at some of your interactions, and even if you listen to some of the people who spoke tonight, the things that they're talking about, the issues that are coming up in their relationships have more to do with their own view of themselves than they do with what other people are thinking about them, right? And so when we're in relationships, it's often about relating to ourselves. Like a lot of times people say, I don't, he thought that I was worried about this, or I was worried people would think this, or I'd worry, what you're really worried is about what you think. And so that's where the work is oftentimes is between you and you, right? So I
Yeah.
don't know, sit with that for a little while and see if it starts to resonate.
Okay. And I saw someone talk about, saw you then talk about the codependence, avoid codependence.
No, I didn't write that. That's somebody named
I think
Phil, and
PD Phil. Looks like it's Phil.
I don't think he's in the room anymore. So
Oh,
I
okay.
don't, I can't, I don't even know. I don't, this might have been his first night. I don't even know what he's,
Huh.
um, codependence. Yeah. I mean,
I've heard that before
codependence.
too.
Yeah. Codependence is when one person's a 0 and the other person's a 10, and sometimes they flip, but, it's always that 0-10 dynamic. That's not a relationship that I teach, but some
Mm.
people are in those kinds of relationships and they get a certain kind of satisfaction from it. But that's why what I teach is alternating between thoughts and feelings. Because if you take up the thoughts and the feelings, especially in a conflict, your partner has nowhere to go. Then the partner has to be a 0 and you're a 10.
Okay, one last question then.
Okay.
It's online dating app. I'm kind of new. I got likes. However, I just not able to bring up interest just based on looking at pictures of someone.
Yeah,
I don't even know how to choose a person to talk to
right.
or meet. I don't even know how to start the conversation. Someone just a look.
Yeah, that's hard. I mean, that's one of the downsides of dating apps. You know, a lot of people get overwhelmed and so they just don't do anything. If you
Mm,
want, maybe set yourself like 20 minutes and just start somewhere, with somebody. But give yourself a time limit so it doesn't become too much of an energy suck. You know what I'm saying?
okay.
Just pick,
Yeah.
just start somewhere.
Somewhere, you mean physical location?
No, just start somewhere with the list of people that like you,
Oh, oh, okay.
you
Got it.
know. Okay.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And try to get to those in-person meetings, within the first 2 weeks. Okay. Because that's how you know if you actually like them. Okay, last one. Lords.
Hello?
Hi, Lords.
Hello.
How can I help you?
Hi. So, I guess for me it's a very simple question, but I'm always in the situation where I feel like well, I am being myself, the most genuine I can be when it comes to relationship, but the pattern repeats itself where we only last 6 months. And I always feel like they're unemotional available, but then somehow it turns to being available and then it turns back to being unavailable. And I was just wondering what exactly are the signs for me to look in someone that's available emotionally? Because
Okay.
I feel like that also hurts the commitment and I I'm tired of just going in somewhere, seeing that it does work, we like each other, we make it official just for it to end after 6 months of making it official.
Right. Okay. So, no relationship, first of all, no relationship lasts forever. Every relationship ends in death or divorce. But I do understand you want a relationship longer than 6 months. So, one of the things, let me tell you about these things have been studied. There are periods of relationships. So the first 3 months of the relationship is the perfect period. Okay. That's when neither of you can do any wrong. You guys could be a couple on the cover of O magazine. He's perfect. She's perfect. Everything's going great, right? That's that first flush of love, infatuation. And I actually used to have a client and now she's in a relationship, but for a long time, that's all she wanted, that first 3 months, and then she'd break up at 3 months. Because then the next 3 months, 3 to 6 months, is the imperfect period. Okay. So during the imperfect period, that's when you start to see the cracks. That's when you're like, oh, well, he farts. Oh, well, she has body odor. Whatever it is, that's when you start to see the problems. Then 6 to 9 months is when you see if you can negotiate a relationship. So basically, what's happening with you is you're just not getting past the imperfect period. You're not getting into the negotiation of the relationship. Um, And it does take time because of the romantic projection. Now, I don't recommend that anybody get married. You have to know somebody at least a year. You could get engaged, but don't get a good psychopath or sociopath can fool you for up to a year, 9 months to a year. Um, at 3 years is when the romantic projection ends. That's when you really start to get to know each other. Okay. But that doesn't mean that you necessarily can't get married before then. If there are good patterns of communication in place. So, I mean, to really understand what's happening in these situations, and if you could have known beforehand, whether these guys were emotionally available or not, we might have to get a little more detail than we can get tonight. Which we could do either another week at Meetup or maybe in a private or something. But essentially what you look for in these relationships is are they willing to make and keep commitments with you? That's a very important thing. So that could be a rubric that you use. Do their words and deeds line up? If they say they're going to show up at 5, do they show up at 5 or do they come at 6 with with saying nothing else or show up at all? Okay, so some of these are indications of a certain degree of emotional maturity. If you want to be in the feminine energy, do they cherish your feelings? If you want to be in the masculine energy, do they respect your thoughts? Okay. So some of these tools that I teach, and a lot of these are in my first book, How to Live. I'm going to put my credentials in again because we're going to wrap up here. But some of these tools can help you see these things a little more quickly. So there might be things that another one like I was talking about with Sophia, I think, is about heeding your gut instincts. If you have a gut instinct, do you bring it up or do you suppress it? Learning tools of communication so you can politely and considerately bring up problems. Learn how to negotiate with love. That's what I teach. That's what we do here. So those are some ways that you can kind of start to see maybe a little sooner. But maybe not, again, we'd have to get into the weeds of your specific situation. Does that help?
Sorta. It's just, I guess it's also the fact of, I've been in the masculine energy too much, and I feel like the feminine energy is just deep, deep down inside and always just like wanting to come out. And when I do come out, it seems like they're not okay with it. It's
Okay.
very interesting.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe that you need to start leading with your feminine energy, which basically means leading with your feelings. And if you're leading with your feelings, even the first date, you say, I'm cold, and he says, nah, it's hot in here. That's a red flag, right?
Yeah.
If he gives you his coat and puts it around your shoulders, that would be a green flag. So if you start leading more with your feelings, you're going to be able to see whether or not he's willing to cherish them. Sometimes if you're going really hard leading with your thoughts in the beginning, you're probably choosing men who are okay with that, which means men who are probably a little more feminine. So then you switch it up on them, they're not cool because they want their feelings cherished. And they've been respecting your thoughts. So that could also be part of the problem. Does that make
Yes.
sense?
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
it does.
Okay. Because what we don't want to have is that competition. That tends to kill relationships. Okay, I'm going to wrap it up because we're a little over. If you guys want to reach out to me during the week, you can do so. I know Meetup's been janky, so go to my website, chloe'sconsciousnesstraining.squarespace.com. I'm also on Instagram, TikTok. I won't be here next week, but I will be here the week following. We can always schedule a private. I love doing those, and I usually book even in as small increments as 15 minutes. So if it's a quick thing, we can get it out really fast. If you want longer, I've also do script appointments. I think my longest sessions are usually about an hour and a half at one time. And then I'm teaching these module packages as well. I've got one more module this year, but I also have the asynchronous. So there are a number of ways for you guys to reach out to me, especially when Meetup is wonky. And if I don't hear from you, then I will see you back here in a couple of weeks. Thanks for coming.